country in a world. What's his name? Shh, secret squirrel. He's got tricks up his sleeve.
Hey, good morning, folks. Welcome to The Spy Who Loves Liberty. Holy cow. Secret Squirrel. Oh, man. Hanna-Barbera. 1967. Is that right, Jeff?
He's doing his
Hold
producer.
on, I'm sorry. I was doing my producer stuff. It says on here 1965.
65. Okay. So I was close. I don't remember so well. I was just a little children back then, so I can't really say for sure. But good morning, everyone. Welcome to The Spy Who Loves Liberty. I am your host, Gregory Junk Bond Carpenter. On a beautiful sunny day, just kidding, in the People's Democratic Republic of Northern Virginia. And it is a wet one today. I know you didn't come here for the weather report. You came here for smooth, cool commentary and analysis, which is what we offer here on the Cerberus Radio Network. In the wings is the always super awesome Suzanne Sherman, our in-house lawyer, no, for real lawyer, and our producer, Mr. Jeffrey, yeah, I could do that, Johnson, pulling the strings in the background, making the production real, live, and I would say very user and family friendly. Suzanne, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Your little intro made me remember something my grandfather used to say. There are in-house lawyers and there are out-house lawyers.
I remembered what I was told a long time ago by my Nana Rosanna Dana used to say to me, Gregory, it's always something.
Well,
for all you old Saturday Night Live folks out there, right?
And actually, that's when it was good. That's what it was a good show.
That's when Saturday Night Live was fabulous.
James Curtin and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. It was funny. Now it's just stupid.
Yeah, it's just political attacks now. It's really nothing of any comedic value whatsoever. But I digress into the present. Suzanne, give us the rules of the road.
Rules of the road. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network, our fan page on Facebook, CRN. Want to welcome the new members, all the new followers. Thank you for the people that are submitting such great feedback for us. We really need to hear that. You can listen to us on SoundCloud and download all of our episodes. Jeff, I think he was just saying we have over 200 episodes on there. I know you just did another episode of the Liberty Minutes about sugar. A bad boy hanging in the corner of the room, blaming someone else for all the trouble. It was a great episode to all those. Kind of like Greg in the background there. I just did another episode of the Fundamentals of Federalism. Jeff helped me record that. That was the article of the AR-15s and why we have just capitulated the point and said, we should maybe, it might be okay to ban them. After all, they are weapons of war on the American streets. So check out that article that was published by the 10th Amendment Center. And let's see, we have a YouTube page as well. If you're listening live, join our chat room. Let us hear what you have to say. We will share your thoughts, questions, concerns, complaints. Send to Junk Bond and Greg and Jeff there. And we have a radio code link. You can listen to our outstanding programming excellence 24/7. I was just thinking yesterday, we had a few glitches in production on the show. What we maybe don't have in production polish, we have in content. So we're like the garage band of talk radio. Raw, but really good. How's that sound? So what do you got in store for us today, Junk Bond? I know Booger's running a few minutes late, but we should be hearing from him momentarily.
That was awesome.
Well, thank you.
That was just totally amazing and phenomenal.
I got up early just for you.
Are we? I got to go there. Are we like a hair band? I mean,
well, that's what I was going with. I figured we were,
everyone out there in radio, they obviously can't see me. I'm so we're not, all right, never mind. I'm sorry. I digress.
So, folks, I was asked this morning, how I felt, just so everybody, we get the air clear about this. And I said, I felt like I was suffering from the Coriolis effect. And of course, Jeff, the producer, who knows all things, he's like JFK. He knew the answer to everything. But he said, okay, I'll bite. What is it? So just so we clear the air right now to make it completely understandable to everyone how I feel. Now, not everybody's an astrophysicist. Not everybody worked in space. So people work in spaces, but they've never worked in space. So here is the textbook definition of the Coriolis effect just for Jeff. Jeff, in physics, the Coriolis force is an internal or fictitious force that seems to act on an object or objects that are in motion within a frame of reference that rotates with respect to an internal frame. In a reference frame with clockwise rotation, the force acts to the left of the motion of the object. Now, didn't that clear everything up for you?
Clear as mud. Thank you.
So to make it clear to anybody else out there who's not as brilliant as Jeff is, actually, for example, on Earth, the effect, it moves objects to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere, right? So that's how you get cyclone weather systems or that start hurricanes. They turn one way in the north and the other way in the south. That's what we're talking about here. And it causes that disturbance in the force. You see? That's all it is, Jeff. It's just physics. For goodness sakes, my friend. Hang in there.
I was not a science person in school.
Oh God, no. Same here.
Well, there you go. See, that's what you get for not doing astrophysics.
Okay. Well, I don't think I got through biology.
No, same. I had to take it, but that was just painful. Chemistry, I had to cheat my way through. Physics, forget it. Calculus, no. Took algebra 1 3 times. No, not my thing. We got a nice recommendation on our webpage, on our Cerberus radio page, I should say. Rich Garvey Banton said, I am impressed with the format and the content. That was nice. Thank you, Rich.
Oh, Rich, rock on, dude.
Yeah.
We attempt to be adults and have intellectual discussions here, not of the level of what you would hear on, I don't know, an amateur production like Fox News or PSNBC or PMSNBC or something like that. We tend to not yell and talk over each other, but to have an intellectual discussion whenever possible.
Whenever possible. I want to just also share a comment by our loyal listener and good friend, Jeff. Perfection isn't necessarily good radio. The awesome content your network has make good radio. Well, hello, co-hosts out there in Virginia. So yes, thank you, Jeff. That's really nice commentary. Appreciate that.
And that's truthful stuff too. That's serious. I mean, where else can you get trains, planes, automobiles, and dogs and intellectual discussion in the morning?
Well, think of the early bands. I loved early AC/DC. They were so raw. Early Def Leppard. I loved their first album. Once I think, who was it? Mutt Lange that got hold of them and started overproducing them.
Yeah, and then he made everything. Yeah,
I didn't like them at all after that. Early Van Halen, later on Jump. What the hell, you guys? But yeah, so we're like the early dudes. We got great stuff.
So in the rocker world, we used to call that song "Jump." We used to call it "Thump."
We used to call them Val.
Hit the rock bottom with that.
Oh, rock bottom! Yeah, awesome.
Here's where Cerberus Radio Network's going. We're going to have the rock and roll talk radio, and we're going to have cigar and bourbon talk radio. So heck with politics and prepping. We're now going to go the opposite direction.
Hey, welcome to the morning Junk Bond Show. We got stacks and stacks of wax and wax. We got the pick, click, the ones to watch, the oldest but goodies, and the ooze but gooeyes. We got the top 700 records here in the world of Junk Bond Radio. Not bad, huh?
All right. Go ahead and do your show, Greg. You've been hijacked by Larry, Curly, and Mo.
Really
hijacked by happiness, my friend.
Are you guys doing the Let My People Smoke thing in Philadelphia? We should give that a plug.
Oh, boy. If you don't know about this event, I believe so. I have local interest here. It looks like we might drive up in a mini caravan of sorts or something along that line. Let My People Smoke is it May 16th? I think, Jeff. I've got to go back and
I'll let you know in a second.
yeah,
I'll get
thanks.
back.
So it's in May, and it's up
May
in
15th.
what is it?
Wednesday, May 15th.
15th. Okay, 15th. Recovery Day is the 16th. That's it. It is an amazing event with over 30 cigar vendors. They're all premium cigar vendors, everyone and everything you could think of. Nish Patel usually shows up. Eric Espinoza usually shows up. And of course, CIO, Arturo Fuente, Drew Estates, all of the big names are there. And we usually spend the morning in the Rocky Patel Smoking Lounge at the Twin Smoke Shops, run by our friend Anthony Renzulli for the last 50-something years, the oldest family-owned cigar shop in Philadelphia. And after that, in the afternoon, we go back, take a couple hours, and mostly stretch the stomach, because when you get to Let My People Smoke, you are exposed to the most massive, and when I say massive, I mean massive spread of everything you can think of. Everything from prime rib to lobster, there's shrimp, there's scungili, there's calamari, there is lasagna, there's those little lamb rib. What are those lamb chops called?
Oh, I love those.
What they
They
call
them
those?
lollipops. They call them we
I don't
call them
know.
lollipops. I love
But
those.
these are the absolute best lamb. I don't usually have lamb chops, but these things are the best thing you'll ever taste. It's almost a rapture.
It's
Those things.
They melt in your mouth, not in your hands, folks. It really is that. It's made by the premier lamb chop, and I forget the name of the company too, but it just blew me away. As soon as those things came out of the kitchen, they came out 16 at a time on a silver platter, literally a silver platter. And they were gone before they got past the buffet line, the line that was waiting to get to the buffet. It didn't make it past that line to get placed onto the buffet. Once the initial group of them were gone, up on the buffet line, the kitchen was off to the side, so you had to break through the line to get to the buffet table to put them out there on the spread. And that poor guy never made it past that line. He'd get to the line, people would grab him, boom, gone. That was it. Those things, because you don't want to sit and let them get cooled off. That was my reason for grabbing a couple. I don't know what your reason was, but I made a justification because I couldn't afford to let somebody else eat those things. That's how good they were. It was amazing, just amazing. They kind of melted in your mouth, didn't they, Jeff?
Oh yeah, it was just the amount of, if you don't walk away from there so stuffed you feel like you're going to die, it's their own fault, because he's quite right. There is so much food. You're just like shoving in your face all night long. And I won't, there's also a bar there. And during the night, the price of the tickets, I'll tell you folks out there right now, it's the price of the ticket is $200, but you're going to walk out there with at least $200 worth of cigars.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, at least
$200 worth of cigars. It's probably more than that. Some of the premium cigars you're getting are probably fairly expensive, and you're going to walk out with it's just a wonderful evening. You'll have a great time. If you can make it to Philadelphia, if you live in the Philadelphia area and you want to come and join us, call Anthony Renzulli at the Twin Smoke Shop. He's on 10th and Tasker in Philadelphia. Call him, make arrangements now, because this is going to sell out.
So, it's going to sell out big time. Yeah, I remember we had to get tickets early the last several years, as early as you can, because those tickets will go. And it's not just the amount of food that's there; it's the quality of the food and the beverages that go along with it was out of this world. It was something like you walked off the street into a mafia dinner for for all of the mob bosses who got together, where nobody got shot, right? and on one side of the table, and then the Queen of England and the crowd of like upscale snotty-nosed people of the year are also in there. You have this huge array of people, but the food is made of such high quality that it can serve everyone in the spectrum. We realistically, there were people from different mobs there, right? The Vietnamese mob was there, the Italian mob was there, and but everybody was smoking cigars and everybody loved each other. You know, that's the way it is, right?
Greg Jess, the mob was not there.
No, they're not that. They're, you know what? They're the folks that are around town. They, you know, they look like it. They sound it's like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, it's good to see you, my friend. How you been? Yeah, you know.
And like I said, you're going to meet some of the big names. You're going to. I mean, I'll be surprised if Nish isn't there. Nish Patel.
He's always there. Yeah,
I know Eric will be. Eric's always there. I think Philadelphia Twin Smoke might be his second home now. He's in Twin Smokes as much as he's in Miami, I believe he's from. So
yeah, he's from Miami. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it because he spends every waking moment with Anthony Renzulli. So if you don't know the name Anthony Renzulli, you might want to get to know it. He's got his own line of cigars also. I would tell you that those cigars are some of the highest quality cigars I've ever had. And thank you, Jeff, for sending me a box most recently. You got me back on track. I was almost out.
Yeah.
But I'm a much better person for having him now, I have to admit.
Yeah. Well, since I know I'm going to be there in a month, I'm just about out as well, but I'm not going to force Anthony to ship these this time. So I'll pick them up in a month. And I'm going to tell you, I love his Maduro. Oh, sorry. We don't need to talk cigars on your show, but it's, I mean, he has
cigars are much more interesting than what I was planning on talking about today. So, I mean, the Maduro, yeah. Is that the Bellicosa size or the Churchill size?
His little Singubez. I love those things.
Oh, the Singubez. Oh,
yep.
God. Oh, to die for.
Yep.
And they're made by Eric Espinosa, too.
They are. They're Espinosa cigars.
Right. So they are premium cigars, and you get it for a great price. Okay.
Yep. So go ahead and start your show. Now that
there you go.
Your show and talked about rock and roll. We've talked about cigars. We've talked about again, call Twin Smoke Shop, 10th and Tasker, Philadelphia. Talk to Anthony. Tell him that you heard this on CRN Radio. Greg Carpenter and Jeff Johnson told you to call him to make reservations for Let My People Smoke, and do it soon if you can make it.
And you walk away with so much more swag. You get T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. You get cigar cutters and you get bumper stickers.
We got shot Twin Smoke shot glasses.
Right.
I can't even remember all the stuff we walked away with.
And then there's a raffle at the end. You don't even have to buy anything. You can buy extra raffle tickets if you want, but you don't have to buy nothing. And you could just walk in there and use your entry tickets and the couple that they give you straight up front. And I don't know how many free things they gave away in the last couple of years. Probably enough to fill 6 cigar shops with all the lighters, the cigars they gave away. Remember that one year Jeremy won those flying pigs, a box of flying pigs from Drew Estates. Oh my word. What?
And I don't remember how much that box cost. It was they're very expensive, and it was a whole.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, that's quite a catch right there. And Jeremy always seems to win at least twice every time we go. So I'm gonna be filming him this year.
I can't remember what it was. The one year I know they were raising money to fight the federal government's upcoming regulation of cigars that were going to almost put all those small people out. Anthony would have been put out of the cigar business as far as his line.
Well, you can't afford the tax on it. The implementation tax on it.
It was going to put some sort of tax on it, and Anthony would have been pushed out of the business. So I know the one year it did that. I'm not quite sure what they're going to be raising money for this year, but all the money, all the proceeds from all those raffles and stuff go to something that they're raising money for.
Right, and it's always a good cause. It's always related to cigars or helping kids or doing something like that too. So it's always a really fine, upstanding cause.
Yeah, and
Andrew-
before we change subjects, Andrew, our friend, and I'll give you his last name later. If you're looking for a decent cigar, I have a friend in Tampa who produces Rolling Thunder cigars. Let me know if you want me to give you his contact info. Andrew will probably get that off you in a private message. So, and we'll give it a shot. We do love good cigar.
Right, and then we'll give you a review of the cigar when we try to pair it with different drinks. So the answer is yes. The answer is always yes. If you have a new cigar that's hitting the market or something like that, please let Jeffrey and I know. We will definitely ensure that we indulge on the behalf of the listening public because we're here for you. We'll take one for the team, and we will be the first one to smoke it and have a drink with it, just to make sure that we can give you our humble opinion, and probably end up buying a stack of them anyway later on because I've never had anybody suggest a bad cigar to me. To be honest, they've always been good cigars. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. Well, Suzanne, did you want a cigar too?
The last time I had a cigar, there was a lot of alcohol involved, and it didn't sit well with me. I don't know if it was the combination. My dad and my grandfather actually smoked cigars for very early on. So to answer your question, no, I don't like smoke at all. So I wouldn't be attending one of those. The food sounds amazing, but I get asthmatic when I'm around a lot of smoke. So no cigar, but I'll double up on the lamb. I'm reading actually a page, or I got kind of quiet for a while because I'm reading something here, a post on my news feed that says, "If you're still here, you made it through round 1 of the Great Purge. I'm looking for constitutionalists that will link together to create a raft in the sea of madness rather than drown you in the air for themselves. We are what we think we are. All that we are arises with our thoughts, with blah, blah, blah." Anyway, our Constitution.
Is that from Hannity or something?
And then there's a comment on the thread about major update on the GoFundMe wall.
Nice.
And a little heart, and I'm going to be getting into that on my page because our good friend Andrew had a post up on Facebook the other day about the wall and immigration and its lack of constitutionality. And we had a couple people on there, "Oh, you're absolutely wrong. This is an invasion." And our good friend Dave Benner, who was our contributing historian, wrote a great piece that Mises.org published. I love Mises, on what the founding generation thought about invaders. Who are invaders? How shall we treat them? How shall we determine what they are? So I'll be getting into that during my show. And Junk Bond, you're welcome to stick around and contribute as well. So that was kind of
that sounds super.
We see
now
people
that I'm completely off topic. Yes.
Well, this is and it's interesting because we have all these people saying they're constitutionalists, but none of them understand what the Constitution really is and the programs that it's more, again, do we have Democrat values? Do we have Republican values? And guess what, folks? Neither one of them are conservative, and most of your platforms are unconstitutional anyway. So just stop waving your constitutional banner and just say, we're one united state, and this is what our side wants. So I know I'm totally digressing, but I was just, reading that as we were going along. But I'll be getting into that, what was an invader. But Jeff, this is something I'd been meaning to ask you, and I think this is a good topic for us to maybe segue into all our other stuff on the shows. Who were the founding fathers? Because it seems to me
John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
When we talk about the founding fathers, it seems to me that we're always leaning towards the Constitution. There were some in that generation who were vehemently opposed to the Constitution. Are they not founding fathers as well? As Patrick Henry not a founding father? What about Yates and Lansing, who left? Rhode Island, the people of Rhode Island never even showed up for the constitutional, for Philadelphia Convention. Why do we consider the founding fathers only those who supported the ratification of the Constitution? Seems to me there's no room for debating whether or not the Constitution was a good thing. And I saw somebody the other day whom I really respect, and he says, it really breaks my heart to see that there are some people out there that think that the Constitution was flawed and people failed it. Patrick Henry felt it was flawed. He smelled a rat. I said this all the time. Yeah, he smelled a rat. It was a big, fat, stinking, plague-ridden sewer rat from Washington, D.C. that has migrated across this continental landmass. How did it do that? The Constitution was the ship which took it across. That was a really good analogy. I'm really clever for my first cup of coffee.
Right. Go ahead, Greg. Do your show.
And thanks for handing my show back to me today. This has been a broadcast on the CRN. Oh my goodness! So I was going to cover some of the things that you find on the internet today, and I wanted you to know that they were actually real stories. They're not fake news. They're not hyperbole. These are things that actually happened. It's a different twist, I guess, because people get all riled up and excited about different memes and things like that that they see, and they'll have these in-depth discussions and really faux analytics that goes into this stuff. But I wanted to talk just about there's about 10 or 15 things that I kind of jotted down that I thought that people would rather know is really the truth, as opposed to just being, faux news. And the first thing I wanted to cover was the story. And don't get me wrong, let me just say, most people are probably only aware of a concept called rat kings, thanks to the 30 Rock joke, which Liz Lemon and her on again, off again boyfriend, I guess, Dennis Duffy. I think it was Dennis Duffy. They were in danger of becoming like the human version of that. And then Alec Baldwin's character it's just a whole mess. But in reality, there really were rat kings, and not just a metaphor for bad relationship. Okay. Rat kings have been depicted in art and literature since around the 1500s. In 1963, there is X-ray evidence, and you can find this. It's available on the internet now. There's evidence of a rat king. It was in that year there was a Dutch farmer, Njaten, who found a rat king which consisted of 7 rats all stuck together by the tail. In an X-ray, they confirmed that the tails had been mangled and broken, which resulted in a fused creature. Talk about a little sick, a little crazy. Yeah, that's insane, but that is real. This has happened before. So if you see something about it, it's real. Now, they often panic and freak out, and they'll break other legs or other appendages and stuff like that. But it causes the rats to even become further entangled in this psychotic, gruesome, horrific looking thing. But you can actually Google it now, and you can find pictures of the X-ray that shows the fusions of the tails together in that 1963 grotesque finding, I would call it. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about today, and I'm making it a little abbreviated because half my show is gone. So if you're just tuning in, this is the Cerberus Radio Network. This is A Spy Who Loves Liberty with a 30-minute brief show today, because we were talking about cigars for the first 30 minutes and liberty. But we're going to talk about TWA Flight 800 now. Now, Jeff, Suzanne, you're both familiar with the extended series I did on the other station on TWA Flight 800. But I just want to cover the fact that some of these pictures from TWA Flight 800 are still out there. And I just recently talked with the lead investigator for the ManPads aspect from the FBI. Again, he's a good friend of mine. And he's going to come over, and we're going to do another episode here on CRN about what went into the investigation for the MANPADS aspect of it. And folks, if you're not familiar, TWA Flight 800 left JFK Airport in New York going to Rome in 1996. And it exploded 12 minutes after takeoff, which killed all 230 people. The explosion was so big you could see it from downtown Manhattan, which was quite a way away. One of the bystanders said there was a 30-foot high wall of flame, and another said that looks like the ocean was on fire. 200 and something people said that they saw a rocket going up towards the plane. They could tell by the tail and the light in the sky. The initial fear was that it was a result of a terrorist attack. There was a 4-year-long, mostly dog and pony show that found, quote, no signs of terrorist attack. And I got into it on Twitter with then director of the FBI, Louis Freeh, who did not address any of the evidence that I put up on Twitter for him to talk about. Instead, he just said, oh, I see. You're saying that our guys were involved in a cover-up. Our guys did this. Our guys did that. A basic deception technique called the readdress. In the intelligence community, you use deny, deny, deny. And he did his 3 denials and then counter-accuse. So he denied anything about a terrorist attack. He denied knowing or being aware of any manipulation on the part of the FBI, keeping evidence and information from the NTSB or removing any information from the hangar. And then he counter-accused me of trying to blame his guys for doing a cover-up. It was textbook. I expected it. I was laughing about it at the time because I knew exactly what was going to happen. Now, Louis Freeh's living in a beautiful $14 million house down in Florida. He wasn't, what could you say? He wasn't really that rich before he started his job as the director of the FBI, but I digress. And of course, he was the director of the FBI for some of the worst and most egregious violations of freedom in the history of these United States, which has helped get us to where we're at now. You might remember Waco, Ruby Ridge, all of the things that were not investigated in the Clinton administration, Travelgate, Whitewater, the death of Vince Foster. He was a director for all those things.
Hey, quick question. Remember,
Yes.
there was a file that they were looking for from that Whitewater investigation, and
Yes, the one with Hillary's fingerprints on it.
yeah, wasn't it found in her personal living quarters or work
Yes.
area, something like that? Whatever.
In her house. It was in her house.
That would be personal area and living quarters. Yeah. So did they not jump on that and pursue that angle? Why did you have this and why did you say you didn't have it? And here are your fingerprints on it? No.
You're trying to read way too much into this with common sense.
Okay.
I don't think the director, the job of the director of the FBI is not to slam the president, his wife, or people of that nature, i.e. Mueller investigation, right? Theirs is to protect the oligarchy, that's in place. That's their job. So you're really not going to get any answers out of these guys at this point. I've seen that. And one of the most incredible things that Steve said when he was on my radio show, that's Steve Bongart, former FBI agent, lead investigator for the MANPADS attack for the TWA Flight 800. He was also the first agent on the ground in Afghanistan tracking bin Laden. He's very, very well known throughout the community. He said, I think that any reasonable people should, and I'm just paraphrasing what he said. I have the quote. I believe me, I put this in a WAV file and I saved this and I bronzed it. because he said, I think a healthy distrust of the government is a good thing. Let that sink in. And by the way, Louis Freeh also was the director during the Oklahoma City bombings. So there was plenty of things that he had failed to successfully investigate over the years. One of the other things that's out there that happened, it happened several years ago now. The Vacanti mouse. I'm sure that some people might remember this, might not. I don't know, but I think it was 1996, 1997, somewhere in there. Reconstructive and plastic surgeons, Vacanti, two brothers, Vacanti, they had taken and tried to grow a human-shaped ear from cow cartilage, and they implanted the ear in the back of a laboratory mouse. Why a mouse? Well, they used what was called nude mouses. The nude mouse has no immune system, so they don't reject any foreign bodies or anything like that that can be implanted on them. So there was this huge ear growing on the back of a mouse. Now, if that's not creepy enough, please go ahead and Google it. To give yourself a good laugh about it. It worked. It worked. And that led us to the point where we have other types of genetic engineering with very little research supporting it on why we should go in different directions. And it actually brought us to the point where we are now, where we can manipulate different portions of DNA. And it can happen without people actually ever knowing that it happened to them. That's the scary part. That's the scary part. So moving on, one of the other things that is absolutely real is, have you ever gone surfing the web and you've seen kids out there for Halloween and they're out there with mom and dad and they're all cute looking and you got your Star Wars costumes and you got your little superheroes and stuff. I know for a fact every year Jeff dresses up as Batman. And he with a cigar and everything, and he goes around extorting candy from the neighbors, as a good officer should do. Well, years ago, these costumes, most of them were made at home. Some of them were made out of paper mache. And if you don't know how to do that, folks, it's cornstarch, that's paper, that's water. It's very simple. But they were big, they were ugly, they were cobbled together in whatever was around the house that you could make a mask of at the time, which probably would have scared a scarecrow to death. If you get a chance, look at some old Halloween costumes. I'm sure the pictures are out there on the internet. And it was just one of those things that I was thinking about because I remembered when I was a little guy, we used to make the masks ourselves. So you're saying, gosh, man, Junk Bond, you old. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. But I have to tell you, I'm not as old as Jeff. And I just want to make that clear for everyone out there. I'm still young enough to enjoy life. Remember what I did yesterday. Remember how to put my pants on every day. But I'm definitely not as old as Jeff. What was the other thing? I got a few more on my list here. Back in 1970. No kidding. A whale had washed up on the beach in Oregon. And Highway Patrol pulled up, roped off the beach, public beach, and they tried to figure out what could they do with the whale. They can't bury it. It was just massive. So they decided to take a half a ton of dynamite and blow it up. Preparing themselves for a Darwin Award, they gathered crowds of people, or as you would say in the old days, back when Jeff was young, throngs of people gathered to watch the destruction of the whale carcass. Well, they blew it, and huge chunks of whale
That
flew
was amazing.
all over the stinking place. People went running for their lives. 200, 500-pound pieces of whale flew. One of them flew about a half mile. Now, if you put on your surfing safety glasses, so you don't get offended if you're a millennial snowflake or something like that. You wouldn't be a millennial snowflake if you're listening to us now. Actually, if you are, then good for you, because you're learning and you're going to be converted to a normal thinking human being soon. Put on your safety glasses and watch it. It is, if you have any level, if you've watched Halloween 2, Halloween 3, or anything of that ilk, this is not going to disturb you at all. You're going to be laughing. One car was completely crushed. Thank God there was nobody inside of it. Only a couple people were injured, but people were splattered with whale carcass. And the funny thing is that there was still a huge chunk of whale carcass left on the beach, and the birds would not come because it was rotting. The birds wouldn't come near it, and there was no vultures in the area because it's a beach. There's no vultures out on the beach, so there's really nothing to consume it. It was too far up on the beach that the crabs wouldn't go near it. It was just a nightmare for them. But there you go. Now the next thing on my list, I put this in here because back 2 years ago, one of the kids in my daughter's class in middle school said that's not real. And the teacher agreed. And my daughter came home and said, "Dad, I thought that I read in the encyclopedia about Chinese foot binding. So mom's of Chinese descent, and mom's talked about it." And I said, "Yes, it was horrific. It's terrible, but that's what happened." And she said, "Yeah, the teacher said that's not true." And I said, "My goodness, that's terrible." So people believe that this isn't true. So I want you to know that this is absolutely true. There's actually tiny foot binding shoes that are on display in the Smithsonian. And if you look at the size of these things, you couldn't get a baby's foot in there. It was a beauty practice in China that what they did was they smeared arsenic and lead on the skin to get a pale look. So you're really ingesting radium, right? To have that type of a pale look. It wasn't some type of cosmetic that they put on there. It was arsenic and lead. Foot binding, in the same manner, was a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. Lady Wang Shen died in 1243. She was the first person who was confirmed to have her feet bound. Now, this goes along with the other crazy, I would call it beauty practices. In childhood, a girl's toes would be broken and wrapped under her feet. The goal was to ensure that the feet were no longer than 3 inches. They were called golden lilies by the Chinese. Young brides back in the day with feet longer than 5 inches would not get as many marriage prospects, no proposals. And they would offer a much lower dowry and lead to a lower status in life with poverty. The binding process took several years, and almost every day the bandages had to be changed. It was a horrific thing. It only ended at the beginning of the 20th century. And that was because of the Christian missionaries that went over there to China. But for almost 750 years, this is what happened. It is real. It is real. If you go surfing the internet and you come across this stuff, do not be surprised. It is horrific and it is real. Next on my list is the Tuskegee syphilis study. This was something that, if you want to say, my government never do that to me, well, this is one of those where you can check the box and say, my government did it to me. It was a 40-year project that went from 1932 to 1972. And the diagnostic research group here were the poor black men in Tuskegee. They were lied to and manipulated. They were given propaganda. They were told they had syphilis. They were told that, but they weren't told syphilis, actually. They were told they had bad blood. And many were treated with placebos and denied medication over this period of 40 years. Now, syphilis can be cured as early as the 40s because of penicillin. But they weren't told about this. They were left to die from this untreated illness. And again, several were given syphilis. Others already had syphilis. And our government ran this study knowing that these people would die. The Tuskegee syphilis study was, again, a real thing. It was truthful. It happened. And you can't go back and fix things, but my, oh my, you don't want the government to do something like that again, even though it has. And we can get into that on a different show one day because I'm running a little short on time here. But I want to keep going here with the things that are really true that you find on the internet, as opposed to some of the fake stuff that you're going to see. The rape of Nanking, the Nanking massacre. If you haven't read about this or learned about this historical event, then you really don't know history. You really haven't learned about some of the horrific offenses Imperial Japan imposed on China. It was December 13th, 1937, when the Japanese troops occupied the city of Nanking. It was the capital at the time of the Chinese Republic. The atrocities that the Japanese committed in the 6 weeks after that occupation was nothing short of horrific nightmares. 6 weeks long, the Japanese imperial forces slaughtered their way through Nanking. The estimation was, in those 6 weeks, 250,000 civilians were killed. Some estimates say 500,000. And it wasn't just the fact that they died. It was the additional cruelties that the Japanese army did as they raped and tortured many of the victims. And after they were dead, desecrated the corpses in many ways I care not repeat. At least 20,000 women and young girls, estimates say probably over 50,000, were raped during the massacre. Many were raped, killed, and raped again. Children as young as newborns were murdered. The barbarity and cruelty cannot be explained with words about what happened. This is the stuff that medieval minds would have thought of during the day. Folks, If you haven't read about Nanking, take the time, learn that bad angle of history. Let's talk about Agent Orange. Now, everybody knows about Agent Orange, and I can appreciate that people were told, oh, we used Agent Orange in Vietnam, but any idea we were using Agent Orange for experimentation? It's like something Dr. Mengele would think of, right? Or maybe, and, and folks, if you don't know these guys either, the Japanese Unit 731, you go look those guys up. You think the German scientists who were brought over here with Operation Paperclip were some deviant-minded, sick SOBs. You look at Japanese Unit 731 back in World War II, and you tell me who was smoking crack all day and who was the sickest of the sick.
Quick question, Junk Bond.
Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't one of the reasons that the Chinese citizens are so vulnerable was they had recently been subjected to being disarmed?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were told that they had to turn in all their arms. That's right, because there was a concern that there would be an armed rebellion against the Chiang Kai-shek nationals. And I mean, it's a long term, but short answer, yes, they were disarmed.
Thank you.
It's a very good, yes, ma'am. It's actually a very good point.
I have my moments.
Oh, momento. Where was that? Oh, yeah, we're talking about Japanese Unit 73. Folks, if you have not looked them up, read what's publicly available about them. I can tell you there's probably a lot more somewhere locked up of some of the horrific stuff that they did. Why? Because when we brought those scientists over here too, we brought them and we put them into the fold of our, quote, creative minds of scientists, and of course use them to make us the greatest nation on the facade of the earth. But prisoners were taken and they were exposed to the toxic compounds. And where was this done? It's right down the road from Jeff in Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dr. Kligman, who was a dermatologist, and he led the experiment for the military. At one time, he was quoted as saying, "All I saw before me were acres of skin. It was like a farmer seeding a fertile field for the first time." His experiments included injecting the inmate's skin with, it's a blistering agent, Agent Orange, if you don't know, to see how the surface would respond to chemical attacks. And he tested other toxic compounds also, dioxin, poison ivy, several other things. And the prisoners were given small payments for their, quote, willing participation. But of course, in prison at that time, you really are not a willing participant. Records show that Dr. Kligman disproportionately targeted the black inmates for his experiments. He never apologized or acknowledged for any of his wrongdoings. But yes, we tested Agent Orange right here, downtown Philadelphia, Keystone State, folks. Let's see, I got about 5-6 minutes. Okay, next couple things I want to cover. I'll cover them a little bit quicker, I guess. Chernobyl happened. It was not the worst nuclear accident in the history of the world. If you want to go back and look at horrific nuclear accidents, and don't look at Fukushima either. You're looking the wrong way in history. Go back a little bit further. There was worse than Chernobyl in Russia. I'll give you that. If you figure it out, send us a note, put it up on our website or something. Let us know you found it. The first responders in Chernobyl They didn't make it, as you know. And it was one of the most horrific things that you could see. They tried to contain the fires, uh, mitigate as much damage as possible, but they had no protective equipment against the radiation. And the exposure levels were so high that some of them didn't even finish the job on the first day before they were dead. Um, Another one high on my list of things is, as Jeff may know, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Jeff, do you remember that one?
No, I don't. Maybe I do, but I just don't realize the name of it.
Okay. So, and this is a very interesting one, too, because it really did happen. There's a huge fire broke out in the wastebasket in the factory up on one of the higher floors. This is back in the turn of the century, I want to say it's 1908. One of the most fatal industrial accidents in the history of the U.S., as a matter of fact. 600 people died. Here's the issue, is these guys, back in the day, shirt collars were made and they were detachable from the shirts, right? You put them on separately. And that's what this company made. Well, in the fire, everyone started to go for the stairwell to the fire exit. And as they were going down and going down and going down, it turns out that the doors that opened to the street opened if you pulled them inward and not pushed outward. By the time the first people got down there, other people were right behind them. They could not pull the door open inward, and they were crushed. And subsequently, everyone else was crushed on top of them. And on top of that, there was more that were crushed. Horrific. Just horrific. What do I got? I got 3 minutes. Okay, I'll get one more in here, just so we know that this is reality. A group of women throughout the 10s, 20s, maybe early 30s or so, I want to say, they were called the Radium Girls. It's a radium. I'm going to put radium on your. What the hell's going? Yes, there was radium pigmentation that was put in clocks that would make them glow, but it was also seen as something that could be put into cosmetics that would make your skin, quote, glow. What? Yes. And there was all of these women who tried on these different cosmetics, eyeliner, eyeshadow, blush, foundation, all this other stuff with the radium in it, died from cancer, anemia, many other disfiguring and painful ailments. For many years, the U.S. Radium Corporation continued to deny their responsibility and also tried to suggest that the girls had all died of syphilis because that was the big thing at the time. Eventually, the truth got out and the families were compensated, but man, oh man, too many young women had died from their mouths and jaws literally rotting off their heads. And with that, I'd like to remind you that sometimes what you do read is real. Sometimes it's the truth. And it's horribly gruesome and terrible, but it's reality. Check your sources and never take anything for granted. You always wanted to double check what you have. Check with a reputable source. If you can get a scholarly source, if you can get an encyclopedia, use something like that. Never take anything at face value, folks. This is Greg Carpenter, the spy who loved liberty. You all have a great day and stay safe out there.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. The Wasatch Report, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman, and I will be your host for the next hour here on the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. We're in our second hour of live programming here today. Did another 2 hours yesterday. We're trying to bring you fresh, new content as often as possible. I think we've done shows every day this week. Maybe we missed Tuesday. Today, by the way, is April 5th, year of our Lord 2019. Jeff Johnson is at the control panel here, producing and contributing. I have to apologize. Yesterday, we had some technical issues, and neither Junk Bond nor myself were able to hear him at all. So if we appeared to be talking over him and otherwise ignoring him, that was absolutely unintentional, but it looks like we are all dialed in today. I heard the opening intro music. I was able to hear him on the first hour. I have a lot to get into today. First, I want to remind you to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. That is spelled with a C, Cerberus, if you're spelling impaired, like so many people are these days, thanks to spell check. And we have a YouTube page, live YouTube chat going on. I want to welcome everybody to the chat room. SoundCloud page. If you can't listen live, you can always download us for free. Please follow. Also, subscribe on YouTube. Let's see. We also have a Radio Co. loop. So if you go to our Facebook page, you can just hit a button and listen to us round the clock. We've got excellent programming, including The Spy Who Loves Liberty, Greg Junk Bond Carpenter, the host of that show. He just knocked out an episode before my show here. Liberty Minutes. He did a great one this week on sugar. Jeff Johnson and I recorded Fundamentals of Federalism, where I discussed the 10th Amendment article that was published about the AR-15 and the proposed ban. So that's very relevant right now. Give that a listen if you prefer to listen as opposed to read. If you want to listen and read both, whatever, until we got our radio network page up and running. I know Junk Bond's working on that. Go to SuzanneCSherman.com. And on our social media bar, you can hit the YouTube or SoundCloud button and hear all of our contact directly there. My articles are...
We have a bar?
We have a bar. We talked about food and drinks and all that in the first hour. Now we're going to move on. So you can hear all of our shows on there. Go to the YouTube button or SoundCloud. You can hear them as well. My articles are there and latest blogs. So latest blog also out are Lies My National Park Told Me. I kind of reworked the one that was published by the American Conservative a few years back. I wrote an article about a month-long travel journey I took with my boys to teach them history. Lo and behold, I exposed them to multiple instances of egregious propaganda. So you can find that on, I believe, our Facebook pages as well as my web page. Lies My National Parks Told Me. The article that was published by the American Conservative actually was limited to pretty much Monticello and Montpelier, the homes, respectively, of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, also some of the incidents from Colonial Williamsburg. That being said, they focus primarily on the Revolutionary era. I also covered some areas from instances of misinformation from the era of the war against Southern independence. It was not a civil war. So let's see, what do I have lined up for you today? I have an instance of Trump derangement syndrome, and I'm bringing this up because it took place on a street where I used to live in Palo Alto. I saw the sign, California Avenue. Holy cow, that Starbucks is right on my former street and shopping area. Be talking a little bit about the false paradigm and why we find the hammer and sickle so acceptable, but the Nazi symbol unacceptable. We have this false left-right dichotomy here, and that's absolutely not true. We're going to be addressing that issue. Ties into cultural Marxism and how it really shapes the debate and discussion we can have when we're fighting for our freedom here as well. I have some contributions to make. This is going to be my only show where I talk about Joe Biden, but a few articles came together and I'm going to explain, yeah, the guy is a creep, but not really just for the reasons that everybody is talking about today. Finally, I'm going to get into the southern border issue. I saw a very lively discussion on Facebook yesterday with regards to this being an invasion and Donald Trump must act immediately. Our good friend and resident historian Dave Benner wrote an article that was published by Mises.org on what the founders thought. What were their sources for determining what an invasion was? As we know, one of the reasons that the Articles of Confederations was abandoned in favor of this new system of government was for a common defense. So we're going to explore that a little bit. But before we get into that, Julian Assange looks like he's going to be kicked out of Ecuador. He's been holed up apparently in the Ecuadorian embassy. And they said, I saw this article last night, within hours to a few days, citing a high level source within the Ecuadorian state. Do you know anything about that, Junk Bond?
Sure. Yeah. Assange has been the case against him in Sweden has been dropped because there was lack of evidence on the part of the person that he, quote, allegedly sexually assaulted, as we could have deduced as far back as 2015 or so. So that case is gone. And in England, the British Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, said that Assange is a free man. He can leave the embassy whenever he wants to. So the only thing that's keeping him in the embassy right now is the freedom-loving U.S. The president of Ecuador, the new one, I think his name was Marino, had come in and started pressuring Assange to leave. Now, why would that be the case? The prime minister or the ambassador at the Ecuador embassy said, we have no interest in pushing him out of the embassy whatsoever. But now the president's saying, yeah, he's got to go. Well, how did Marino win in Ecuador? He won it with, and I hate to say this, but you know how everybody blamed the Russians for interfering with an election in 2016, and we're supposed to be so outraged about that? Well, we funded the Marino campaign from the U.S. Yeah, that's right. We did that. So this is kind of a little bit of payback, right? He's going to give Assange to us because we got him elected. It's as simple as that.
And we have this outrage over Russia interfering with our elections. We do this all the time. We do this everywhere. Look what we did in Venezuela. You guys did a great show on that. And some of this stuff isn't even below the radar of public view. Remember, Obama openly sent a contingency force over to Israel to get Netanyahu beat in the election. Taxpayer dollars where America interfered in the election of a sovereign nation. And somehow, I tell you what, if the Russians had handed Hillary Clinton a victory, there would be no squabbling over this whatsoever. And this is just, pure.
She only works with them when people aren't looking.
Well, Uranium One. Tell me all
there's
of
millions of dollars involved.
Exactly.
Oh, I could do Uranium One all day.
Let's do a show on that. Let's put that in the queue. I want to get on to this this MAGA hat incident. This was again on my own street where I lived in Palo Alto. I recognized the neighborhood. I recognized the little bagel store here, and this gentleman was verbally assaulted for wearing a MAGA hat. Again, I always advocate being the gray man. You don't want to wear or do things that are going to call your attention or maybe bring hostility about upon you. You know, you want to avoid these assaults, but some people, their mileage may vary. This guy's 70 years old. Who knows? He could be a salty old veteran. I don't know too much about him, but check this out. 70-year-old man, the article says here, said a woman berated him and called him a racist. This is all they can come up with. You are a racist if you did not support Hillary Clinton. Called him a racist at California Starbucks on Monday after she, beg your pardon, spotted him wearing a MAGA hat. The man identified himself as Victor, KTVU. I lived in that area. I grew up watching that station. He was wearing the hat when a woman began yelling at him outside a coffee shop in Palo Alto. This is how deranged these people are. When Obama was in office in downtown Los Altos, I was walking down there, and Lyndon LaRouche had some representatives out there with a stand, and they were advocating impeaching Obama. This woman was so outraged. She said she was calling the police. These people are absolutely intolerant of any kind of opinion that differs from their own. But these are the people that demand tolerance and inclusion. But I digress. The woman came over. This is what the man, Victor, is saying. The woman came over and not only started screaming at me, she turned to the Starbucks audience and said, "Hey, everyone come here. This guy's a racist. This guy hates brown people." How many brown people is Hillary Clinton responsible for killing, by the way? Victor, who is Jewish, also told the news outlets that the woman called him a Nazi. The woman, who later identified herself as Rebecca Mankey, spelled Mankey, admitted in a lengthy Facebook post that she yelled at him and called for everyone who spotted the 74-year-old man to please confront him. Now, these are the people, remember, when Obama was elected, okay, we won, you lost, get over it. Give him a chance. We never saw that when the shoe was on the other foot. She says, I yelled at him, called the entire Starbucks to order, and yelled at him more about how it's not okay to hate brown people. I called him more names and told him to call the police. He wouldn't call the police, so I called him a wimp. He got his stuff together to leave. I followed him to the register while he complained about me. Then chased him out of Starbucks, yelling at him to get the F out of my town. You fill in the blanks. She later wrote in a comment that she was going to publicly shame him in a town and try to get him fired and kicked out of every club he is in. Palo Alto police did not fire a police report on the incident. I submit to you, they would, if a woman wearing anything left-leaning was treated in the same manner. You bet your bippity they would file a police report. The story has a happy ending here.
Suzanne, I just want to chime in on this. Here's the deal. You know, as I'm going to use the word, it has no meaning, but I'm going to use it anyway. As conservatives, we need to address this issue in a proactive manner. This guy, she gave him the answer. Call the police. And when the police get there, you insist. I mean, you tell him you want charges because she's committing assault. All he has to say is, I feel threatened and I feel that I'm in danger of physical harm. At that point, she is committing assault. It's not battery, but it's assault. If I'm wrong here, Suzanne, you tell me, because you're the defense attorney. We need to start calling the police and insisting charges be filed. It may not go anywhere, but at least get the police report and put it on them now. I mean, make the police actually do their freaking job.
Well, and you know, again, if this had been the other way, they would have scoured this guy's social media, looked to see if he had maybe firearms. You know, we're looking now where people are going to be determining for hate crimes, for instance, they're going to look at your Facebook, your social media. Are there pictures of the evil Confederate flag or anything to make you a white supremacist? You know, but again, this doesn't go the other way. This woman was fired from her job. Now, remember, this had nothing to do with her performance in her job. She worked at a place called Griffin, Gryphon Strings, a guitar sales and repair shop, after the store owner was made aware of the altercation. I have to say, good for them. They said no, they don't believe anyone should be harassed or subject to hate speech, no matter their beliefs. I was very surprised that this actually happened in California, and they did fire her, not because of the public actions, but because, or public backlash, but because of their actions. They said that they want, that they feel that the store is kind of a musical town square for the community, and they welcome people of all views. That's interesting that they use the words, because that's what I say social media is right now. It's the 21st century town square public forum where all ideas should be freely and robustly debated. And we do not see that.
So they held her responsible for her behavior.
No. Well, the job, yes, her employer did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite amazing.
Whether or not there was enough to put to to charge her with anything, she's
going to sue them now.
Yeah. So we don't know. We don't know enough to say, well, was there an apprehension of an assault? But to call somebody a wimp for not calling the police? No, this woman was the wimp. I mean, we see these people are just out of their minds. And I'll tell you the truth. This is why I am going to absolutely vote for Donald Trump in the 2020 election, should he run. Because nobody's going to really effectuate a change. The role of this government right now is for entertainment purposes only. Just like, we're not a news organization. We're here to entertain you. Well, that's pretty much what our government does. They entertain, yet they oppress. It's just it's a double-edged sword. I want to share a little bit about, because this story ties into why. It was from for this one here, I'm looking at the link on FEE, Foundation for Economic Education. Apparently this was republished from, I believe it said Mises.org. No, Intellectual Takeout. All these places are outstanding. I like Mises, Intellectual Takeout, FEE. And so what they're saying here, if someone were to ask you to think of either extreme on the political spectrum, odds are you're going to immediately picture a swastika at one end and a hammer and sickle at the other. So let me interject for a moment. We have been fed this false notion that the swastika is an image of the fascist right. No, you have to consider government control when a left-right spectrum is presented, with the most government control being at the left, the least, maybe an anarchy situation on the far right. We're somewhere in between. We have been fed this false notion that the Nazi Party was a right-wing party. Absolutely not true. Junk Bond is our expert on propaganda. He can expound on that a little bit later. So many people would be very uneasy seeing Nazi symbols like a swastika, because that reminds us of the evils of the Holocaust. In fact, to publicly display this logo, it says in the articles, is a crime in many European countries. I submit to you, it won't be long before it's considered a hate crime to display or wear images of the Virginia battle flag. We understand how abhorrent the ideology is, Nazism, and we treat it accordingly with disgust. But the article goes on to ask, what about the hammer and sickle? We don't have to write an article explaining the millions of deaths that occurred at the hands of the communist regimes, like the Holocaust, the gulags of the Soviet Union, killing fields of Cambodia are widely known. We know this happened. Yet the journalists in the UK openly and proudly, and here, advocate communism. We have statues of Karl Marx. We have one of Vladimir Lenin in Seattle. So why do we treat two equally bloody ideologies in different ways? And here's what they say: the misperceptions of virtue. As I mentioned earlier, Nazis are seen as hateful and vicious because their ideology is built around the idea that one group is superior to the other. They tie racism to Nazism. It's an inherently anti-egalitarian ideology, a violent belief that was put into practice only once by those who devised it. But there's no justifiable way a fascist could argue that wasn't real Nazism. This is not true of communism. We see this all the time. Oh, well, we haven't really tried socialism yet. Those on the far left have what he calls here an umbrella of communist styles, from Stalinism to anarchism, Maoism, Trotskyism, even just classic Marxism. But interestingly, Karl Marx never implemented communism himself. The leaders of communist states always seem to get a get out of jail free card. Any shortcomings, tragedies, or crises a communist regime faces can always be blamed on a misapplication of Marx's infallible roadmap to utopia. Conveniently, communists can always detach themselves from the horrors of the past. They paint themselves as pioneers of an ideology that simply hasn't had an opportunity to flourish. This is the way advocates of communism can continue to paint themselves as protagonists. They are only ever fighting for the liberation of the working class and the creation of the workers' paradise that has nothing to do with the false prophets of before. At worst, the advocates of communism are seen as misguided, but ultimately well-intentioned. Now, a while back, I discussed an article on cultural Marxism, and what this article, this was out of Mises, said was that the rank and file, those that communism was supposed to benefit the workers, have now been replaced by the intellectual elites. These are the people carrying the torch of communism. And as we've seen in this country as well, the Democrats have very much abandoned their traditional party base. They've abandoned the blue collar workers. They've abandoned the coal workers the coal miners that we've talked about, in favor of drastic and draconian environmentalism. We've seen the intellectuals, the environmentalists, and the elites take over. And this is the explanation of why we're seeing the Democrat Party, in my opinion, take a hard left. The article then asks, where do we draw the line? While Nazism is intrinsically linked to the crimes of its followers, communism can always be separated. No one would tolerate a t-shirt emblazoned with Adolf Hitler or Benito Mussolini, but look how many people are wearing Che Guevara shirts. We see Che Guevara posters in our classrooms, in our schools. Our kids are being taught that he's a hero. Junk Bond, let's have you elaborate. Was Che Guevara a humanitarian that fought for the rights of the weak and the oppressed?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer? We can go both ways on this.
Relatively brief. We only have an hour.
Okay, only an hour. So let's go with the crib note version. No, he was a horrible person. How's that? He really wasn't a nice guy at all. As a matter of fact, he had gone to medical school, right? What's that?
He was a serial killer.
Yeah, he was. He learned how to do it right in medical school,
right,
which is where he got all of his inspiration from. It's quite an amazing story if you want to go cover the complete story of Che Guevara. But yeah, he really wasn't a nice guy. He was a very horrific person. I should have put him on my list of people that we were talking about, because the story of Che Guevara is one that you could actually say, it's like, did that really happen? That's one of those, and people still gravitate to this guy. He killed people. He was merciless. He was self-centered. He was egotistical. Boy, I could think of all kinds of adjectives and adverbs to describe him. There was no stopping him either, of course, until he was killed, but because he literally was a madman.
Hey, Junk Bond, I have a request. Maybe you can do a Liberty Minutes on Che. I want to wrap up this article with a quote.
Shake your Che. Yeah, baby. You can do that.
I have a quote by Murray Rothbard here.
Murray! We love Murray.
I do too. It is no crime to be ignorant of economics. Thank goodness for
Good.
Ocasio-Cortez, huh?
Thank God for me too.
totally irresponsible to have a loud and vociferous opinion on economic subjects while remaining in this state of ignorance. Can somebody please on Che Guevara's staff tell her this? By the way, I got to digress. Did you see that video she did? I think it was on Facebook Live. This girl is drunk off her arse and slurring her speech. I gotta let me share a comment my friend Lisa Schifrin, who's a journalist, said about her. And because I think this gal, I don't think she's going to be able to hold it together. Che Guevara here, she is coming unglued. I mean, look at this. I gotta find this. Okay. This is what my friend Lisa says. She's a journalist that lives in New York City. My take, she's bipolar. After the stress of the past 3 months, she is breaking down, obviously doesn't eat, probably doesn't sleep much, incapable of separating her public self from her private. Everything is a performance. And the warnings about the end of the planet in 12 years, plus no one having kids and your grandkids hating you, paranoid delusion. She clearly believes it, all of it. Kind of hard to maintain all this while knowing deep in your mind, and this is critical, that you were put into Congress by other people who expect you to mime their agenda, and you really are in very, very far over your head. You find this video out there, you can see it, and it might, if it is, it's called, there's one by the Federalist, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or I just call her Che Guevara, okay. I think she's unraveling, so expect more entertainment from her in the future. Obviously, I don't want any harm to come for her, but I think this is symptomatic of, again, somebody that's been put in a position and they are way, way out of their element.
She's going to do a Marilyn Monroe.
And I hope that doesn't happen. I think
I hope not either, but
yeah. I mean, we don't wish her harm, but
no.
I feel bad for her. I think that she could have had a very happy life had she just been left alone and continued. I think, she's an attractive young lady. She's educated. I won't say intelligent. Hopefully she will lose her seat. We've got a gal, Ruth Papazian, is actually someone I know from Facebook who's running against her. She was on Fox the other night. So.
Yeah, it's a sad thing
for you.
Go ahead.
There's another show for you. Does being educated mean you're intelligent? Because obviously, in her case, it may not.
And also, again, the higher educated you are, the more indoctrinated you also are. I want to refer people to my article from the Abbeville Institute. Don Livingston personally asked me to write this. I did, and I was delighted when he said it was splendid. It's really hard to write something for Don Livingston. And it's called The Problem with Lawyers and the Constitution. I've talked about it all the time. Junkbod, you better have read that or you're going to get 5 demerits right now.
The Problem with Lawyers and the Constitution. Ooh.
Lawyers
and Don Livingston gave you the double thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert, huh?
Yes, he did. That was so outstanding.
I'm gaggling it right now.
Let me get into a little bit here about creepy Joe Biden, because we're talking about these parameters of what is safe, what is not safe. We saw the debacle of the Me Too movement, first with Harvey Weinstein, and then Brett Kavanaugh and Harvey Weinstein was an absolute pig, where we're not going to even try to make any excuses for him. We know that. But now we have the ramifications of Harvey's behavior, which fell upon Brett Kavanaugh. I think Joe Biden was pretty silent during Brett Kavanaugh's debacle of the confirmation hearings. But now Joe Biden has been accused of more unwanted touching. And I'm going to say here right away, unwanted touching and sexual assault, I have to say, are not going to be the same thing. This article here from the Washington Times says 3 more women have come forward with stories about how Joe Biden has touched them in an unwanted way. We've all seen the pictures. We've all seen this. Again, if this was Donald Trump or a conservative, if there are any politician or anybody in disfavor with the Democrat Party, they wouldn't be treated with the pass. Oh, he's just affectionate. We've addressed that here before. But 3 more women have come forth. And why is this happening? Well, this is really interesting. Let me find this article here about him being a member, or he's actually a product of this. I have to, okay, how a young Joe Biden, sorry, I had to find the article here, became the architect. Oh, wait, that's the civil asset forfeiture program here. Hang on one second. I'm going to find this article. Junk Bond, run with this for a second while I find this article. It's in my email. Talk about something, anything. You can do it.
Anything at all.
Yes. Here,
Yes,
hang
ma'am.
on. I'm going to find this. I have it
I find it interesting that the people that are accusing Joe Biden of being icky and creepy are completely the opposite group of people, or associated with the group of people from the other polar side of people that accused Trump of being icky and creepy.
Yes.
The thing that's interesting is that the people that accused Trump and Kavanaugh and all the Republicans seem to go away very quickly because it's not true. The people that accuse the Democrats seem to stick around for a while. Kathleen Willey et al. I mean, Jennifer Flowers. These people haven't gone anywhere. They're still sticking to the story that this is what happened. But the people that always accuse Republicans of these things, they pop up. It's like the whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
You throw a little bit of truth at them with the hammer, and they go away, and they're gone again.
And whatever happened to the one that accused Judge Roy Moore? Gone.
Yeah,
He
and
he is no more.
They admitted they falsified their testimony. They forged a signature in a book. And there are no ramifications. If you are one of these people, you can lie to Congress. But if you're somebody in the Trump administration, for instance, and you lie or accused of lying to the FBI, even then when they know you haven't, you're going to go to jail. Okay, I have this article before me now. And here we have Joe Biden shows here. It says Joe Biden is the unwitting architect of the sex panic hellscape he is now living in. I love this article. He made the issue of sexual assault on campus his own. He forced a new interpretation of Title IX onto universities that required them to investigate and dole out unfair verdicts in sexual harassment and assault accusations. Jeff, you're my guy for doing this kind of research, but if you can find anywhere in Article 1, Section 8, the delegated authority for Congress to have such legislation within their powers, that would be great. And then I'll back up the truck and say, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. You give him these types of assignments, and then I have to go read the stuff that's approved by Dr. Livingston.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Wait, there's a little bit of support disparity here.
Okay, call the shop representative. Take this off the air.
Man.
Unqualified bureaucrats took the place of police, lawyers, and judges as a result of false allegations were championed by victim advocates who had no understanding of the law or respect for due process. It's been almost a decade of this appalling overreach. The lawsuits on behalf of falsely accused young men and women are still working their way through the court system. Now, Biden is being taken down by the same bogus standard he introduced across America's campuses, and we're being asked to feel sorry for him. Not only did he advocate for consent across campuses, but he also advocated for affirmative consent, the exact standard he has violated over and over again in viral clip after viral clip of hair-smelling, handsy sleaziness. Countless young college students have been expelled and had their lives completely ruined for unwanted touching that was way more innocent than Biden's. Because of voices like Biden's, the public has lost the ability to discern the difference between rape, ambiguous consent, or encounters that simply leave people feeling uncomfortable. An encounter that leaves somebody uncomfortable cannot, by definition, be a criminal act. There is no objective standard for such a thing. In the sex panic puritanical culture that grew out of the 2011 Dear College letter, what used to be minor grievances or embarrassing stories are now being championed as evidence of toxic masculinity or a rape culture. The college students at the time have since graduated and taken influential positions in media and culture. They spent their college years being taught that social justice trumps due process. Well, we saw that again with the Kavanaugh hearings. They were rewarded for expressing such preposterous opinions, and now they help drive the conversation and the press and social media. And this article says exactly what I just said. Feeling uncomfortable is not abuse, and it's embarrassing that we should allow such inane claims to permeate our culture. I'll submit to you that this is a direct slap in the face for anybody that was an actual victim of abuse, assault, sexual, or otherwise. So while it's fun to maybe make fun of the position he's in, we have to remember that this environment is toxic. He is a product of the environment he helped create. Many who have fought against the undermining of due process are now being asked to defend people like Biden when they fall victim to their own insane policies. Again, I'm not going to wish him bad, but I'm certainly not going to defend him. I think the guy, again, is an absolute creep, but not for these reasons. Here's one. I can hang my hat on this one alone. He was actually the architect. He became the architect of the government's asset forfeiture program. I did not know that until I saw this. Did you guys know that? Greg, you knew that, I bet.
I knew that one there. Yes, indeed. Very sad day.
Yes. Well, here, I'm going to share this article. This is another one from
more government theft programs.
Yes. This was actually reprinted from Mises. So again, great sources of information for you. Again, if you want to chase the headlines on Fox, go over to SiriusXM or go put on, Fox and Friends in the morning. If you like your analysis as deep as a bird bath, this ain't the place for you. So
what did the Fox say?
Yeah. Nothing of significance. In 1991, Maui police officers showed up at the home of Francis and Joseph Lopez. The officer showed his badge and said, "Let's go into the house and we will explain to you things to you." Okay. When you get to that point, you say, "No, you're not coming into my house. Show me a warrant." And then if there is no warrant, you close the door and lock the door. I digress. Once he was inside, the explanation was simple. We're taking the house. What led up to this event? They were far from wealthy. They worked on a sugar plantation for almost 50 years, living in camp housing to save up enough money to buy a modest middle-class home. In 1987, their son Thomas was caught with the devil's lettuce, also known as marijuana. He was 28 and he suffered from mental health issues. He grew the marijuana in the back yard of his parents' home, but every time they tried to cut it down, he threatened suicide. When he was arrested, he pled guilty, was given probation since this was his first offense, and ordered to see a psychologist once a week. I submit to you, they're probably going to drug this kid and give him stuff that's far more dangerous than the devil's lettuce.
Higher than Schedule 1 marijuana, that's for sure.
Right. That's Schedule 1, baby. Francis and Joseph were elated because now their son got better. He stopped smoking marijuana, and the episode was behind them, or so they thought. But when the police showed up and told them that their house was being seized, they learned that the episode was not behind them. The statute of limitations for civil asset forfeiture was 5 years. It had only been 4. Legally, the police could seize any property connected to the marijuana plant from 1987. What an attenuated connection this was. I mean, there was no evidence here this kid was even selling marijuana. This reminds me of the Angel Raish case that I've discussed time and time again in California, where the feds came in, the DEA goons came in and took her legally authorized pursuant to Prop 215 medicinal marijuana, which was making her life, which was excruciating from a very painful malady, making her life barely tolerable. Took her plants, and the SOs just stood by, let her do it. Anyway, getting back to this story, they resurrected the Lopez case during a department-wide search through old cases looking for property they could legally confiscate. The history of forfeiture here, the roots of the law that allowed the police to take their home ran all the way back to 1970. Prior forfeiture laws only applied to goods that could be considered a danger to society, illegal alcohol, weapons, etc. Well, my commentary here is that's not nearly profitable enough. The police need more resources. With the birth of the modern war on drugs, just say no. Thank you, Reagans. Lawmakers wanted something with more teeth. Prosecutor Robert Blakely, having worked under Attorney General Robert Kennedy and various congressmen, provided the teeth. He helped draft a bill for a new legal concept, criminal forfeiture, which would allow police to seize the illegally acquired profits of a convicted criminal. Mind you, there is no constitutional authority for any of this unless we're talking piracy on the high seas, counterfeiting, or treason. In 1970, the targets were wealthy crime bosses, but the assets could be seized consisted of anything that was funded with money connected to criminal activity. To appease those worried about the abuses of power, Blakely assured them the prosecutors would have to provide beyond a reasonable doubt that the criminal was guilty of a crime before the assets could be seized. There was nothing to worry about. Only legitimate bad guys would suffer. This is clearly not what we are seeing today. Now what we're seeing is that this is an incident out here in Utah. Utah Gun Exchange owner has been charged with weapons and drug violations, and they are taking everything he has. You don't even have to be proven guilty. You can have, I think, an acquittal, and they're still going to keep it. The new policy was passed after the RICO Act. Blakely was a fan of the 1931 movie Little Caesar. That's kind of irrelevant for the time we have right now here. The RICO Act wasn't actually designed as part of the war on drugs. It was just meant to target criminals. Then arrest Congress. Hello. When Nixon took office, the RICO Act was one of a number of new tools that the members of this newly created Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, precursor to the DEA, could use to fight this war. But through the 1970s, the RICO Act was still largely ignored by prosecutors. I'm going to skip down now to the Biden angle of this because it is a long article and we're running short on time. Biden, young senator at the time from Delaware, had to do something to show that despite his liberal reputation, he could be just as tough on crime as his Republican colleagues. See, this was when being tough on crime was in vogue for the Democrats here. He took notice of the RICO law and realized that law enforcement agencies were not taking advantage of it, particularly in regards to the drug war. So he turned to the General Accounting Office and asked them to produce a study on the potential uses of RICO for drug enforcement. Report then showed that the RICO Act granted enormous powers to police to confiscate drug-related assets, but these powers were not being taken advantage of. The government has simply not exercised the kind of leadership and management necessary, he means criminal behavior, to make asset forfeiture a widely used law enforcement technique. By the time the report came in, Ronald Reagan was settling into office and getting a wide range of a renewed war on drugs. So Biden had a part in this, and new legislation, the Comprehensive Forfeiture Act, fixed all of these problems, meaning they weren't utilizing this enough. The new bill was introduced by Senator Joe Biden in 1983, signed into law the next year. With this law, federal agents had nearly unlimited powers to seize assets from private citizens. The government only needed to find a way to let local and state police join the party. That's just what I was going to get to. They call this equitable sharing, by the way. There's nothing equitable about this for we the people, but this is great for law enforcement agencies and government, and they share the loot. 1984 Comprehensive Crime Control Act. Again, piracy on the high seas, treason, counterfeiting, only constitutional federal crime offenses. In addition to a slew of new powers for prosecutors, the burden of proof for asset seizure was lowered once again. Agents only had to believe what they were seizing was equal in money to believed to have been purchased from drug sales. More significantly, they started again what I mentioned, equitable sharing program that allowed local and state law enforcements to retain up to 80% of the assets seized. So you can go find this article in its entirety, fee.org. We will post this on here. One of some of the fallout, and this is something I just came across, came out yesterday on April 4th. Manhattan District Attorney Cy Vance spent $250,000 over the past 5 years from a state asset forfeiture fund on fine dining, first-class airfare, luxurious hotels. They are taking this money and squandering it, spending it on themselves, living in luxury. I don't care if they are using this money to fund drug programs, community safety programs. This is immoral. It is unethical. Civil asset forfeiture absolutely needs to stop. There's another article out here also. Joe Biden, this was from Zero Hedge, funneled $1.8 billion. Junk Bond, you probably know something about this, and I'm going to wrap up the show with some quick commentary on what the founders considered to be an invasion, because Trump said the other day he's going to delay closing the border for another year. So much for our national emergency, by the way. But really quickly, Biden funneled $1.8 billion to Ukraine while his son bagged a sweetheart government deal. Junk Bond, you know anything about that?
I heard a little bit about it. That I didn't research it or anything, but it wouldn't surprise me at all, considering the fact that politicians do this all the time with their kids. It's considered a rite of passage for them to pass on contracts to their kids. And I'm sure that happened around the time that we were destabilizing Ukraine, right? That's probably when that happened. Right around 2015, 2014, somewhere in there. So he would be able to go in and rebuild, because that's where all the money is, right?
Isn't like Feinstein or Pelosi's husband?
Diane, I was just going to mention that Diane
company.
Yes, Diane Feinstein's husband made a fortune on the high rail project, the high-speed rail project in California.
Yeah, so there's no, no surprises here. This is one of those things that has turned into the status quo. And pardon me. And this is one of the best reasons, and it may seem like it's a little abstract thought, but this is one of the reasons that term limits won't work either.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you're going to get folks in there that are going to pass on their congressional seat to their kids, or their spouse. It's obvious because it happens now. If somebody dies, right, or becomes incapacitated.
McCain, yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Then their spouse runs. What's that?
Jeff mentioned McCain's wife.
Oh,
yeah,
exactly.
Finally didn't do it because there was such a public outcry.
Yeah. But here's what this article says here. Joe Biden allegedly directed $1.8 billion in aid money to Ukraine as vice president, while his son, Hunter, received millions in dollars from a Ukrainian energy plant or energy giant, Burisma Holdings. So this is, again, the dirty dealings. It has become so damn profitable to be a Washington, D.C. legislator. This is why decentralization is so important, because they have absolutely abandoned any form of restraint whatsoever. We have the $4 trillion pig trough, and everybody is fighting for scraps every time we have a budget. Now we had February was the largest budget we have ever had in the history of this nation. Pardon my French. So let me turn really quickly to an issue of immigration and our southern border. I want to wrap up the show with that. Again, I mentioned during your show in the first hour, Greg, that I came across a page that said everybody that's not a constitutionalist has been purged. And then what do we see there is a link for a GoFundMe wall for the border.
And if you order before midnight tonight, you also get the incredible Ginsu knife collection for only $19.95 extra. It's only $19.95. Be a constitutional conservative and get the Ginsu knife collection for only $19.95.
And we will private message you how to perform the secret handshake. Your own Dakota ring. We have
Perform the magic.
we have a Dakota ring. It's called the federal judiciary. It decodes improperly the Constitution here. But let me get to this. This is from President Trump says he will delay the closing of the border with Mexico for 1 year. I thought this was a national emergency. So he said Thursday he's going to delay the closing for a year because apparently backtracking because he said earlier this week he was going to seal it off. He told borders at the White House that he would give Mexico a year to halt the flow of illegal drugs coming into the United States. Well, how about we stop the drug war and stop making it so damn profitable? If the drugs don't stop, the U.S. will impose, tariffs on Mexican autos. How convoluted is this? If that doesn't work, then the U.S. will close the Mexican border. So let me point out a couple things that candidate Trump had said. He was going to stop the illegal immigration. He also said that he was going to respect the Second Amendment. Well, we have the bump stock ban. We have extreme risk protection orders. First, take the guns and we'll worry about due process. Hey, Senator Di-Fi, I'm open to discussing an assault rifle ban with you. We're seeing talks now. Bump stock ban and so on and so forth. And again, we're going to bring the troops home. That hasn't really happened yet. So he's saying that this is going to be a powerful incentive. So we're a year out now, at least, from solving what has been touted as a national emergency. Now, the Democrats are a lot smarter than the Republican Party. Again, we've heard them called the party of evil, and the Republicans are the party of stupid. They're going to get as many as they can, shut down every voter ID law, and do everything they can to fix the 2020 election so they get a result in their favor, particularly if they get enough states on board to eliminate the Electoral College. So let's talk a little bit. We have two contingencies here that I see in my little social media circle. Those that are saying, like we do, there is no constitutional authority for a wall unless, say, Texas wants to build one. Because if you go under the Jeffersonian America, meaning the Constitution as ratified America, what the states with their delegates, through their delegates, ratified and to which they consented, sovereign and independent nations came together to essentially form a free trade zone and set up a system for common defense. Pretty much that was it. They were to determine who would live within their territorial borders. That's immigration. That's migration. But Article 1, Section 4, well, Article 1, Section 4 talks about naturalization. That is a path to United States citizenship. Dave Benner here talks about, and he has a great article, Mises.org, what the founders meant by invasion. There was really no dictionary until a 1755 dictionary came out by Samuel Johnson, an English writer. And this was a dictionary that was in effect when Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, and Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution were drafted, respectively called the Militia Clause and the Guarantee Clause. Powers were meant to assure that the general government would protect states from invasions. Well, now we have to determine what is an invasion. Well, the standard we're using right now is pretty subjective, because one party is saying these are immigrants, they're coming here as they should, but the other party is saying, yeah, but you know what, they're going to vote in ways that are not in conformance to what we believe. Is that an invasion when people come across your border who are going to vote in a manner that you find distasteful? Is that an invasion? So we have two clauses have been recently cited by those, I'm going to the article, who support spending military forces to the southern border to restrict immigration. Some going as far to suggest the president has a unilateral power to do so. We've discussed that before. I'm not getting into that today. Seems reasonable then to take a glance back. What did the American founders have in mind when they constructed the invasion authority? Again, he goes back to Johnson's 1785 English dictionary. The first definition, hostile entrance upon the rights or possessions of another, hostile encroachment. provides specific examples for clarification. 3 examples are cited here, and we don't have time to get into all of them, but I'm going to mention here, this is the meat and taters of the article, point to cases in which military forces were equipped with weaponry, fought on behalf of a foreign power, intended to commit physical violence against individuals in another country. Conversely, in no instance did the term refer to the migration of an individual from one territory to another, where said individual lacked intent to inflict military harm. Another definition he gets into, attack of a discase, suggests definition unconnected to military subjugation. With discase meaning to strip or undress, even in this case, relates to deliberate attempt or cause physical harm to another person, even with the argument that the word invasion has a broader application on this basis, it would still require one to hold such invasion would include a physical attack rather than mere relocation. And then what people are going to say was, well, Suzanne Steinle, look at the people who are being attacked and hurt by these people. I agree. But that's not unique to that contingent of society, is it? Again, looking at which America we are considering, the Jeffersonian America, where the states were sovereign and independent, this remained within their purview. We have another America. As of 1861, we have the United States of America, where all major social and cultural issues are relegated, described, defined, delegated, top down from Washington, D.C. At that point, with Washington taking over immigration, regulating it, we have the 1965 Immigration Act. We have federal benefits. We have the Supreme Court mandating that these children of people who come here, if you argue illegally, must be educated. We have benefits. I talk about this in my article published by the 10th Amendment Center, The Constitutional Solution to Immigration. So we have to look at it from this stance. If we stopped making it so profitable for people to come here, if we stopped wars on drugs, wars on terror that create unrest, turmoil, in other sovereigns, creating the need for people to come here, we wouldn't be having these problems. We have to stop federal benefits from following people that are coming here, if you are arguing illegally, across this continental landmass. They can come here through one of these porous border states and go wherever they want. As I explain in my article, if California wants to have an open border, they and only they, not other states via federal grants, etc., must be fiscally responsible for the impact of their policies. They're screaming and crying about the Oroville Dam that was about to burst a year or two ago. Trump, we need federal money for this. I tell you this, like if you have a kid who spends all his money on entertainment and then can't afford his car insurance, are you obligated to pay that money? Because that's a responsibility he has to honor. Well, now he doesn't have the money. So what do you do? Well, we got to send them the money. Make California pay the price for their policies. We've had a great 2 hours today. We look forward to more programming next week. Junk Bond, I hope you'll be around. And Jeff Johnson, I want to thank you for joining me today as we wrap up the show. Keep these things in mind. Every significant point of contention we have here is the result of a government that has thrown away the principles upon which it was founded. I'm Suzanne Sherman. On behalf of the rest of us as the Cerberus Radio Network, I want to thank you for listening. Have a great weekend, everybody.